Good evening. So, first of all, I just want to say I wasn't able to get on here at live at 8 o'clock because we had a Christmas event at my church today, which was absolutely fabulous. Shout out to Change Church. And so today we're going to wrap up the week of talking about navigating emotional challenges. And so today we're going to talk about giving yourself the gift of letting go this holiday season and dealing with some of that unresolved guilt and shame that maybe you have been dealing with from your past. And so even though we know that sometimes there can be great memories during the holiday, we talked the other day about how sometimes people can have triggers of past trauma during the holidays, and sometimes that can cause people to have feelings of guilt and shame regarding their past. So we're going to talk about how to release those emotions and to give yourself the gift of freedom this season. So why does this matter? I think it's important because acknowledging that many struggle with unresolved guilt over past actions or decisions, especially as they reflect during the holidays, helps people to know that they're not alone. So just the fact to acknowledge it in this space and to let people know like, oh, this is a real thing. I am not the only one that is experiencing this can be really helpful, and it matters to people. Also wanting to emphasize that healing is a gift that we give to ourselves. And I say that because healing is a process. Sometimes when people go through really traumatic things and guilt and shame is attached to that, sometimes it can take years before those things are resolved in one's life. But also we have to be actively working towards healing. It's just not going to happen overnight. And so I think that it's really important just to be able to emphasize that the healing process is something that you are giving yourself. You are saying that I am going to work on this thing. I am going to do the things that I need to do in order for healing to take place. So what does that look like? What does it look like to be healed from our past trauma and some of the things that are causing us to feel guilt or shame? First of all, one of the first things that we have to do when guilt and shame is involved is we have to be able to forgive ourselves of any decisions that we've made, any mistakes that we've made. Sometimes we can really feel like things are our fault and we can blame ourselves, and we have to be able to let that go. We have to be able to forgive ourselves. And so I think for those people who are wanting to forgive themselves, they're like, well, how do I do that? How do I forgive myself? And so I think having a realistic perspective of some things that have happened to you will help you to understand and know that it wasn't your fault. You are not to blame, and to be able to forgive yourself. Sometimes things happen in our childhood. Children make mistakes. Sometimes children are helpless in a lot of situations. I would really say situations where trauma happens with children, they are powerless in those situations. So if something happened to you as a child, you were powerless in that situation. And so to be able to say, hey, that wasn't my fault. I don't have to carry this guilt or shame with me any longer. And so I think it's important to say that guilt is feeling bad for actions taken or not taken. And when we feel shame, we kind of internalize that guilt and believe that we are unworthy. We believe that we don't deserve to move forward. If we do something, we may feel like we don't deserve the love of other people. We don't deserve other people's forgiveness. Like you might feel guilty for if you have infidelity in your marriage, and you may feel guilt about it, and you may feel so much shame, and you may feel like, oh, this other person is never going to forgive me. And even if you move on in the marriage or the marriage ends in divorce, either one of those situations, forgiveness can still happen. And a person doesn't have to carry that guilt and shame around with them. So why do we hold on to the guilt? Why do we hold on to that shame? Well, I think sometimes people may hold on to guilt and shame because they feel like others are judging them. They have a fear of being judged by others, and they are judging themselves. They feel like they want to be better, they want to do better, but they just feel like they haven't been able to do that yet. And they may make mistakes along the way, as people do, because change takes time. So when they're in a situation where they're trying to do some things differently and trying to make some different decisions, and then they're not able to do that, or they don't do that, or it takes them a while to do it, sometimes they can feel like, I'm never going to be able to get this right, or they feel like other people are judging every little thing that they do. Also, in addition to that, sometimes people hold on to guilt because they feel like it's holding them accountable. Like sometimes they feel like, if I forgive myself, I'm letting myself off the hook for the thing that I've done. Just the same way we feel like if we forgive somebody else, we're letting them off the hook for what they've done. But that is not true. When we have forgiveness towards ourselves and towards others, it's a way of us to be able to move forward and not stay in the same place. So why should we let go of the guilt and shame? Because it can take an emotional toll on a person. It can cause feelings of anxiety, depression, difficulty being present and in the moment with the people that we care about and that are in our lives. It can take a physical toll on us. Stress. It can cause like fatigue due to sleep disturbances. Sometimes people are not able to rest, not able to get the proper rest and sleep because they just feel so guilty and so ashamed about things that have happened. Also, it impacts our relationships with other people. We can have strained connections due to unresolved feelings. And the thing about holding on to guilt or shame, it doesn't fix the past. It only keeps us stuck where we are. So if we want to move forward, we have to be able to acknowledge and accept what has happened, and acknowledge and accept our emotions without judgment. What happened? Why do I feel guilt or shame about it? This would be a good opportunity to maybe have some journal writing. What are you holding on to? How has it served or hindered you? And just really being very transparent and very honest in those journal writings, or even just like talking through it in your mind. It would be a great idea if you are holding on to unresolved guilt or shame to see a therapist and someone to kind of just like walk you through it. It's good to practice self-forgiveness because it helps to affirm us, help us to be able to move forward. I'm not my past actions. I deserve forgiveness, especially from myself. And understand that self-forgiveness doesn't mean you're excusing any harmful behavior. It just means that you're recognizing that you've grown and you're not the same person. So if you're not the same person and you have grown, why do you still continue to harbor feelings of unforgiveness towards yourself? If you need to make amends with someone, if your guilt and shame is attached to something that you've done wrongfully to somebody else, reach out and apologize if it's possible and it's healthy to do so. If reaching out and making amends is going to further your guilt and shame, and it would not be a healthy decision to do that, then don't do that. If direct amends aren't possible, you can write a letter and not send it, or you can perform an act of reconciliation to try to reconcile the harm that has been done. You can reframe the past. You can focus on lessons learned. You can say, what did this experience teach me and how can I grow from it? You can also replace any negative self-talk with compassionate statements. And we talked about that before, just being compassionate towards yourself. I am worthy of love. I am worthy of forgiveness, and any other self-compassionate statements that you would like to use directly related to any guilt or shame that you're feeling. You can share through a practical exercise. You can write the thing down on the letter. You can burn it. You can shred it as a symbolic act of letting go. I've done that a few times about things like at church when they're talking about things that you want to let go in your past. You write it down on a sheet of paper, you tear it up and you throw it away. And that is an act of reconciliation. Like, I'm tossing this thing to the side. It doesn't live in my life any longer, and I won't allow it to hold me back. You can give yourself the gift of letting go by focusing on the present. Letting go of the past frees up energy to enjoy the present. Sometimes people are so bound by their past, so bound by the guilt and shame of their past, that it's difficult for them to even enjoy the beauty and the joy that's right in front of them. Every single day is a present. It's a gift to us. And we want to be able to learn how to move forward so we can enjoy what we have. We can ask ourselves, like, what do I gain by holding on to this guilt or shame? And what could my life look like if I let it go? Those are two really big questions. What do I gain by holding on to this guilt or shame? And what could my life look like if I let it go? And sometimes, like, when people have lost a child, like when a child has passed or a loved one has passed or something like that, we can have a lot of guilt and shame connected to the passing of our loved one. A lot of people, when their parent dies or somebody dies, they're really close to a child or something, they have all this guilt about what could I have done differently. But then when we have other people in our life that we love, and we're so entrapped in that grief, it doesn't allow us to enjoy the people that are still here. So it's okay to grieve somebody when they leave here, because it is so sad and heartbreaking to lose somebody that we really love. However, when we continue in unresolved grief or prolonged grief for a very long time, it affects the other people in our life that are still here, that want and need our love. We also want to be able to create some new traditions, and we talked about that before in other lives. We want to use the holiday season as a time to reflect on our values and set intentions for the new year. And this is going to be really important with healing that guilt and shame and moving forward, thinking about coming into a new year like, hey, what are some things that I could do differently? What are some things that I have to look forward to? And how we talked about the other day, just creating the life that you want to see and start making steps in that positive direction. So in the future, you can meet the life that you want to have, not through just osmosis or just ending up there. No, you have to be really specific and you have to be very intentional. And we talked about that in a previous live. And so some of the practical tools for healing is practicing gratitude. Focus on what's going well in your life today. Gratitude can help you shift from self-blame to self-appreciation. Having boundaries with guilt. When guilt resurfaces, you can remind yourself of what you've done to grow and heal. And I just want to expound on that a little bit, because I think a lot of times when we go through a process of change or we have had some change in our life, we can get sucked in or pulled back in or have some old habits. But even if we have an old habit or we make a mistake, that does not mean that you have not changed at all. Change is so small. A little bit of change every day has to add up for other people in our life to see that change has happened. And so everybody doesn't know our intentions. Everybody doesn't know the things that we're working on and the things that we're going through. And so they don't know that we're changing. So if they don't see us at 50%, then it's hard for them to see maybe like 1%, 5%, 10% of change. And so I think it's so important to have those boundaries with guilt to say, I am not the same person. I have grown. I have healed. And maybe writing a journal of when situations are different or when your feelings are different, you can jot that down as a reminder to yourself, as a note to say, hey, I'm not the same person. I'm not the same person. And so you also want to be able to seek some support. If you want to move towards healing, if you have a place that you would like to go to seek out therapy, that would be great. If maybe you know someone like a friend or somebody who has had therapy before, they could recommend someone to you, or you can do like a support group. There's a lot of different support groups out there. And also, you can also share your feelings with a trusted friend that can help process these feelings. And there may be some other things that you think about that you could do to seek support, but those probably would be the most therapeutic, because you do want to be careful when you're in a vulnerable state and you're carrying around guilt and shame, the support that you do seek out. So therapy, a support group, or a trusted friend. And I think the key term there would be trusted. So I just think that when we're talking about guilt and shame, it doesn't have to define us. Guilt and shame are emotions. They are not our identity. Guilt and shame are emotions. They are not our identity. And so letting go is a courageous act of self-love to say, I have had myself. Sometimes you can feel like you're in just weighed down with things that are going on when people carry guilt and shame. And so letting go of that is so courageous, and say, I cannot, nor do I want to live like this anymore. And so I'm going to give myself the gift of forgiveness and healing this season. And I am going to learn how to move forward, no matter what it takes. Even if there seems like there are setbacks, I am going to keep moving forward. I promise myself I'm going to keep moving forward. We have to keep moving forward. And so this season, give yourself the gift of freedom from the past and compassion for who you are today. And give yourself grace and know that you are trying and you want to do it and you have the desire to do it. And that is the first step. And so just keep going, keep moving forward, and be kind to yourself. And so I encourage anyone who would like to share any thoughts that they have about guilt or shame, and some things that they're starting to do, or some things that they have wrote down that they're going to do for 2025. I would love to hear it. And so this is going to conclude our live for today. And starting tomorrow, we're going to start a whole new week, and we're going to talk about empowerment and hope, which I am so excited about, because this has been a really heavy week talking about guilt